Now, the first lesson is going to shock some of you. Now, I'm going to introduce a big word, gobstopped. Some of you might be gobstopped. Gobstopped is a British word. In America, we never use this word, gobstopped. Gobstopped means so surprised you're speechless. Like, oh my God, I thought we were going to learn something innovative and forward thinking, and this first lesson appears to be just the opposite. So this first lesson is it's designed to shake you. Now, who am I shaking the most? I'm shaking most probably those with the most experience. Probably, but not, it doesn't have to be that. Because over the years we accumulate, and when we accumulate good habits and bad habits. It's just part of human nature. We all do that. This course in some ways is going to help you to take inventory and shake you, and hopefully all the bad habits will fall down to the floor. So I'm going to talk about a very basic idea, how to give successful lessons. Now, I just want to stop for a minute. How to give successful lessons is the title of the first lesson, and the key question is, what is a successful lesson? What is a successful lesson? I'm going to answer it, but before I do that, I have a little bit of a Leonardo da Vinci moment. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And that sort of is indicative of what I want to share today. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Leonardo da Vinci was an Italian Renaissance man. If there ever was one, he was a scientist. He was was great in maths and science, and obviously one of the best painters and artists to ever live. All right. Now, a successful lesson is one that students understand and learn from. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment and look at all of you, because I want to explain what's about to happen. Because for some of you, it's not what you're expecting. But in my experience as a teacher, when you peel away all the games and fun topics and all the different activities from the lesson, and you just have the core learning segments, it sometimes doesn't look very good. In other words, before we start to get sophisticated, we have to make sure the fundamentals are correct. And in my experiences, they're often not. And so what we're going to do is we're going to peel back the layers, and we're going to start very fundamentally by saying that we have to make sure that the lesson is clear and simple and easy to follow. Now, I'm not talking just to people who teach grade 5. I'm teaching university. And this is for all ages. Now, obviously, if you teach very young kids, the lessons are already pretty simple. But if you're teaching anything older, we tend to get too sophisticated. So this first lesson is to make sure, in the home task, is to make sure we're all on the same page. You're going to send me a recent lesson or a current lesson or a lesson you want to give, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to scrutinize it along the ways that we're going to talk about in a moment. So I'll go back to sharing my screen. A successful lesson is one that students understand and learn from. If you can do these two things, you're going to have a successful career and a successful business. Let's talk about what that means. What does understanding mean? Understanding means they can easily follow the flow of the lesson. It's logical and clear in each learning segment. They understand. What is learning? It's a balance between old and new material. Now, I'm going to talk about this because I think this is really critical. I think we need to balance old and new. I think if it's only old or if it's only new, then at some point we might have problems. So learning is a balance between old and new material. Revision is part of the learning process, part of memorizing and remembering these things long into the future. And sometimes we have to build that in. I propose we build it into the curriculum. And secondly, learning occurs when ideas are clearly explained and backed up by clear examples. Now, this is such an important topic, and people do such a poor job of giving good examples that I've made a whole lesson out of this. It's so critical to unlocking students' understanding. If you give them a crystal clear example that directly follows what you've been saying, they're locked in and they understand it. Surprisingly, as obvious as this is, it's rarely done well. Giving clear examples right in the middle, not outlying examples, but because I've seen all sorts of examples. And what we try to do, I'm not going to talk about this a lot because that's a whole lesson, but essentially what we try to do is we try to outsmart ourselves, and we try to be very clever, and we give really difficult examples to simple concepts, and students are left confused. I've seen it over and over, or no one gives examples. That's the most common. We don't give examples. We just talk. Like right now, I'm talking. I'm not giving you examples yet. And that's what most of our teaching involves. But we got to go to the next level, give clear examples, and then suddenly things start to make sense. Now, at any point, if you have a question or want to share, you can. All right, I'm going to talk the importance of repetition. I want to build on the learning of the previous lessons. So if we understand learning as a sort of block, then we want to sort of make blocks that sort of add on, but rely on the first block and, you know, the second block. Obviously, with each succeeding block, the first block, the early blocks are less important, but there should be a system to this. And part of this involves repetition. Review the last lesson and show the relationship between that and the next lesson, because their minds don't work. For you, it's clear. The relationship's clear. You've studied this. Some of you've taught 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. Guess what? To the new student, it is not at all clear. You need to state the obvious. It's obvious to you. It's not at all obvious to them. Now, we're talking, so let's give an example. This slide is going to be very controversial, and I understand this, and I understand it depends. I know it depends. So we can, in part, I said this because I wanted to show the importance of repetition. Now, obviously, if you want to move faster than 30%, that makes sense. But if we work from the premise that students don't remember much from the previous meeting, then it actually starts to make more sense that we introduce 30 to 50% new material, and we review, and preferably in a slightly different way, but obviously conveying the same material, same information. We review at least half of our lesson. Now, maybe that's too much for some of you, and I know a lot of you have very ambitious curriculi, and so you have to sort of move faster. But I want to talk about this, how much learning is considered successful. New learning, I mean. So yesterday's lesson is old learning. Now we do review. So here's an example of what that could look like. I just use first conditional. We can do anything, actually. But we do a quick recap and discussion of the homework that you gave the previous day on first conditional. Let's just say 15 minutes. Keep the numbers simple. We do some interactive activities and role-playing scenarios using first conditional that we already learned yesterday, but now we're doing it in a role-playing scenario where they're much more independent because we've already given the previous lesson. And then instead of introducing second conditional, because it's going way too quickly for most students to master first conditional in one meeting, regardless of what they say, then we introduce more complex sentences. In other words, adumbrate, or go into slightly more detail, make the example slightly more complicated. Now, obviously, it depends on the level. We teach first conditional in the intermediate. We introduce it, we go into more depth in upper intermediate, and obviously, if this is an upper intermediate student, then we can probably introduce complex sentences and show them how first conditional works in these type of environments, teaching negative and question forms. Here's what I see, and then real life application scenarios. So you can see here, then we start to introduce new material, but not 100% new material. And so I'm suggesting that we have to review each lesson. Now, the 50% is somewhat arbitrary. I'm not saying we have to stick to that. But if you review 30%, here we're speaking of time. But if you do, I don't review 50%. I think it is too much. But the interactive activities make it essentially 25%. So if you take the first 10, I like to review at least in an hour and a half class or an hour class. I like to review 10 minutes. So I like at least 15%. I think it's really helpful to give 15% review, especially if what you said is important, and every lesson should be important. So then it merits review, 10, 15, 20%. If you add activities on top of the review, then suddenly you're near 40%. Now, I want to talk about this. What's the benefit? Now, well, no, sorry, wrong idea. Here's the key idea. I'm not talking about entertainment yet. We're not talking about new apps, new technology, AI. That's going to come a bit later. But here's the key idea I want you to leave today with. There are a few key ideas. This is one of them. Being entertained is a bonus, but should never be a substitute for learning. And it should never, I don't know if I've written this down, so let me just say, it should never be a cover for your lack of preparation or lack of, or for learning. Now, obviously, if the kids are 3 and 4 years old, the balance between entertainment and learning is probably tilted towards entertainment. But once you get, sort of 7 and older, of course, kids need to be entertained. I'm not suggesting they don't, but you are in school for a reason. It's an educational institution, and that should always be the sentiment. So when you're approaching a lesson, it should not, this is why I wanted to have this discussion first. It should not be, what games can I show them or introduce so we entertain them? That is not a good first question. The best first question is, what's the core learning moment or block? What is it that I want to teach them? That's the most critical question. And let me tell you why it's the most critical. For many of you, it's obvious why, because you're there to educate them. But there's other bonuses to this. One, if you're very clear, and I'm going to show you how to be very clear, identifying a learning moment, identifying a learning idea, principle, whatever you want to call it, then you can add all these games and activities, but move all that away. When you're starting, clarify, what is it that I want to teach them next lesson? That's the most important. Now, we're going to talk about how to package that, but here's why we want to clarify that. And I'm going to advocate in this meeting to simplify it, make it less ambitious, and I'll tell you why later. And here are two outcomes, and we're going to look at these in slides later. One, you want students leaving a little bit better than they were before. So if you offer manageable goals for your lessons, that's key. Number two, once they exhibit that, you have a great selling point to parents. And they're going to see, wow, every lesson, my child, my student, or me, the student, I'm learning something new every lesson. And let me tell you, over time, that's huge. So that's a great selling point. If you're doing that consistently, there's tangible progress. That is a great selling point to improve your business.